So clearly we have a very, very exciting week ahead, but just a quick little housekeeping before we get started. I just offered a new, what would you call it, offering on my Patreon for all patron tiers. I now have a Telegram group chat available. Real quick too, because I know I said this over on my Patreon, but I don't know if I actually said it in my weeklies. I've been wanting to do a group chat for a while for my patrons, but like there's so many fucking apps and I'm losing it with the apps. I'm so over apps. I can't do it anymore. And all of these apps are so politicized nowadays. Like I didn't want to do Telegram because it's again too politicized, but the only other option was Discord, and Discord now like censors messages in between people, which is just a little bit too dystopian for me. But anyway, I have a group chat now available over on Telegram. You get it as a part of my being a patron. Come over and join the Patreon. We got a lot of stuff going on as well. The my How to Read Your Birth Chart course is still available on sale. The link to it is in the description below, as well as I'll pin it on the comments. Make sure you guys check that out because it's only going to be available for $85 for another week or two until I raise the price on it. Anyway, this is the week that we've been waiting for quite some time. And as I was writing this horoscope, what's so interesting about this week is so you know how I've talked about in a lot of my previous weekly horoscopes how there won't be like a major transit, but there'll be a lot of lunar transits, and how those lunar transits can really kind of bring things down to earth. This is like the opposite of that, where there's not a lot of lunar transits at all this week. In fact, the moon is like not doing, there's going to be an eclipse. That's one thing, but like the moon's not making a bunch of trines or squares, but the things that are happening this week are like big planetary movements. This is a very big week, and I need you guys to understand something. And this is kind of what's hard about astrology, because astrology just isn't about, oh, we're tracking the planets and the movements. We're understanding our lives differently, and we're understanding time differently, and we're associating different eras of time with different feelings or experiences, or focus on different subjects. So it can become kind of confusing, and something that you can really see with this Jupiter-Neptune stuff. And I'm getting this question a lot from people. They're like, I thought Jupiter-Neptune was going to be all of this good and great stuff. What's going on? And trust me, there's still more to come on with this week with the Venus-Jupiter stuff. A lot of good stuff is going to be happening this week. But I want you to pay attention to what's going on right now so you can understand it for later. Because when you have Jupiter conjoining Neptune, the analogy I made with someone earlier was like, it's kind of like when you're drunk, but as you're drinking, you're like, oh, I'm not drunk. I'm fine. I don't really feel anything. And then like the next day you wake up, you're like, fuck, I was turned. That's kind of what Jupiter conjoining Neptune is going to be before we go into Jupiter going into Aries. And as we have all these Aries transits happen, that's going to be like, you're going to look back and be like, whoa, that was actually crazy. But in that moment, you may not see it. You may not feel it. So I think that's really important to understand about everything that's going on right now, is that this is much more about in hindsight and not really about in your current reality, if that makes sense. But let's go ahead and go over the list of the things that we have got going on this week, guys. Mercury enters shadow. Again, I think the biggest part about all of this this week is Mercury enters shadow to start off this week. And so it's laying out the context for the next month. I've been trying to tell people from this day, April 30th, I don't even say this day, this week, this last week of April to the first week of June, everything is changing. And it all has to coincide, or it all coincides with this Mercury retrograde. And as Mercury enters shadow, it's like, boom, the context is laid out. I did not get time to make a Mercury retrograde video this time around, but I'm sure you guys get the gist of it. Mercury is going to sextile Jupiter. We love that. Venus is going to conjoin Neptune. I love it. I'd rather have, if anything's going to conjoin Neptune, I'd rather have Venus, to be honest with you guys. Mercury is going to enter Gemini. I am excited for that on a lot of levels, but we'll see a little bit. And then we end this week as we get to Saturday with this total solar eclipse in Taurus. And with it being Venus conjoining Jupiter at her exalted degree, that's quite a Saturday's quite a day. And I've emphasized this in my 2022 year ahead horoscope, in my year ahead rising horoscopes rising sign horoscopes that I did. Every astrologer's been talking about April 30th. This is one of the bigger days. So let's go ahead and jump into it now. So this is like next week. Let's kind of go back here. Oh, whoops. I am all over the place. What day do we want to start on? We are starting on April 25th on Monday. Pretty much the only thing that we have going on this Monday is the moon's going to be ingressing into Pisces and conjoining Mars. So, what day are we on? So here's the thing. Gosh, there's so much really to break down with this. And this is going to be, I don't know if this is going to be either a really short horoscope or a really long horoscope. It's not going to be in between. But the moon is waning. The moon is decreasing in light. And we just got off this full moon where when you get to a full moon, you know, this is like the moon reflecting the sun's light, the moon lighting up the dark, the moon lighting up the night. There's this ability to see what we can't see. We have that moment to reflect and see what we don't always get the opportunity to. And as that moon wanes and the internal light decreases and there becomes this more and more emphasized focus of one area, right? Like a new moon, I always bring this up, is like an intense focus in one area. I mean, that's kind of even more true now with this being like an eclipse. But as this moon is starting to die down, the moon's going to go through Pisces and it's going to hit Mars, Venus, Neptune, Jupiter. And after it transits Pisces through these next couple days, it's not going to do anything in Aries. Like the moon will literally hit Chiron. Like literally, watch, like I never talk about Chiron anymore. And look, moon conjoin Chiron right there. You know it's bad when I'm talking about Chiron transits. But then after the moon transits Aries, it just goes into Taurus and we have eclipse season. So why I'm bringing this up is the moon is going to hit all of these planets in Pisces, and it's going to be like kind of the main event here, but it's going to be kind of checking in with all of this Pisces stuff. So as the moon goes into Pisces, we're going to be feeling a little aloof, a little all over the place. Pisces is kind of like what I love about I'll put it to you this way. I am growing as a being and as an astrologer. I used to be much more spiteful, I think, with Pisces, like the archetype. And I think my problem with it is just really kind of like, goofy Pisces people that don't have their shit together. Like I just hate that as a Capricorn ruled person. I'm all fire and air, but my ascendant ruler is Jupiter and Capricorn squaring Saturn and Aries. So I'm very I like reality. But what I appreciate about the Pisces stuff is it's kind of like when you're not having fun and you're counting the clock, hours and time seem to go longer. But when you're having fun and you're in the middle of something, time seems to go fast. And there's this, Pisces seems to be like this weird warp area of space and time, depending on, of course, your emotions that are involved in it. And I think as the moon's going into Pisces, there is this kind of aloofness. There is this kind of wishy-washiness. But as the moon goes into Pisces, it's going to be applying to Mars all day on Monday. Mars, action, energy, drive. In Pisces now, it has a little bit of triplicity, but Mars usually wants to be very direct and like kind of blunt. And Mars in Pisces has to be a little bit more like intuitive and kind of call things as an audible and not necessarily have like a plan of action. And so I think as the moon is conjoining Mars in Pisces, there is this well, here's actually, I remembered a good word. I heard a word the other day that I was like, this is perfect for the Pisces stuff. Sublimation. I'm going to double check what this word means before I look really dumb right now. But if I'm correct, sublimation. Gosh, I can't spell. Sublimation is when you have a solid state to a gas state. It's when something goes from a solid to a gas. And I kind of think about that when I've talked about Pisces being like the true water sign. And how, water is a solid, a liquid, or a gas. And this moon, Mars, Venus, Jupiter stuff is like things are warming up here. And that process of kind of like de-hardening, like literally sublimation of things turning into this gassy, like, and I don't even want to say noxiousness, but like things aren't solid and tangible. It's much more, in the air. And I look at this moon Mars conjunction, and this is kind of like feeling very not clear on a specific direction, but not lost. Like what's that one saying? Not all who wander are lost. This feels very much like that. And I think as the moon is waning and conjoining Mars, there's usually resistance to the Mars and Pisces stuff, right? Or maybe that's just me personally because I have a Mars in Gemini. But the moon waning and conjoining Mars and Pisces is kind of like you're kind of forced to trust your intuition. You're kind of forced to just navigate the road in front of you, regardless of the tools that you have or the foresight that you have. And I really think this moon conjoining Mars is kind of like trusting your intuition, kind of going, you know what, this is the direction I'm going in. I may not know where I'm going, but I'm going. And there's this is waning. This is things kind of coming to a close. This is things kind of, a lot of acceptance is the word. I don't want to use the word surrender, but this is kind of like, letting it happen. Sometimes, in life, we want to control all of the situations as best as we can. And sometimes, the best circumstances come out of, letting go of that control and just letting things happen for you. And I feel like a lot of this Pisces stuff is just, it may be difficult, especially in Taurus season. Because little known fact, Taurus is a much more of a controller, in my opinion, than Scorpio. But there's this sense of, I think, letting go of control and letting things letting things, happen, letting things, kind of create themselves, letting the circumstance create themselves. And I think as the moon goes into Pisces and conjoins Mars and Pisces, I think it's easier to navigate when you're letting go of the control and you're letting yourself freely explore. You're letting yourself, it's one of those things of like, when you're at work, and you're watching that clock go down and you're just fucking watching it and you're waiting for it. It's the time goes longer. You get more stressed out versus if you just go, you know what? I'm not even going to look at the clock. I'm just going to go do my fucking thing. Work goes by faster. You enjoy your work more. That's what this on Monday is about. Just don't look at the clock. Just do your fucking thing. Focus on what you need to focus on and everything else is going to fall into place. Don't worry about what you don't see. Don't worry about what's not in your control. But then we get to Tuesday. Mercury enters shadow. Mercury sextiles Jupiter. The moon will then conjoin Venus, Neptune, Jupiter. Kind of a lot, to be honest with you. Kind of overwhelming. And I love saying this for people too, because I've gotten some feedback that some people would call my astrology trauma informed. And I really appreciate that because in my opinion, every single one of you guys are so different. Like it's if we were all in a room together, I think you guys would be surprised how different we all are. Because I talk to a lot of you one-on-one as clients, and it's kind of crazy how different we all are. And all over the spectrum things are at. But when I talk about, for one, Mercury sextiling Jupiter is good, but like moon conjoining Venus, Neptune, Jupiter, little overwhelming in a lot of ways. Very like, well, it's one of those things like for some people, like some people can handle a lot of alcohol and totally be fine. And other people have like a little sip and they lose it. It just kind of all depends on the situation and the person, right? We're all different. But the first thing let's talk about is Mercury enters shadow on Tuesday. This is so important because when Mercury enters shadow, from that point, we know that we're going to be coming back to, Mercury's about communication. Mercury's about ideas, technology, thoughts, rationale, messages and communication, plans. And so as Mercury hits shadow, just know on April 26th, you're going to come back to this spot in June 3rd through June 5th. Mark my words. We're going to come back to this by June. We have a whole fucking over a month to deal with Mercury retrograde shit. We're going to come right back to where we were April 26th by the time we start June. Mercury is also on Algol. So we could talk about the fixed star stuff, here for a second. But I don't want to get lost in that because I feel like that'll be more important when Mercury actually stations direct. But as Mercury enters shadow, and again, Mercury is also on the North Node, I feel like mentally, verbally, what's another, I guess, Mercury type adjective? The things that are, that your mind is focused on, or the ideas or the plans that you're trying to, hash out. As Mercury squared Saturn and conjoins the North Node, there's kind of like this pushing forward through resistance, pushing forward through, authorities, kind of doing what you got to do anyway, regardless of what the consequences are. But Mercury is also going to be sextiling Jupiter, where like, it's one of those things where what I love about the universe and I guess just life is there's two types of people, I should say. Maybe not even two types of people. I think there are two choices when a person is presented this problem. If you want something, the universe is going to challenge you. It's going to throw you obstacles, whether that's, a crisis or something small. And it's up to you to decide whether or not that challenge or that wall is the thing that stops you from getting what you want. That's it. I mean, the universe is just kind of checks. Like if you really want something, the universe is like, you have to fucking earn it. And this is something too, I talked about this in my delineation podcast. When we talk about, manifesting and all that shit, you have to earn it. And that could mean whatever it means for you. Earning $1 million could mean just doing 10 push-ups. If that's what your mind is connected to, as far as like your mind being connected to a physical action to create an actual outcome, it could just be that. But a lot of the times, the universe will throw something in your way. And what that will do is validate your shitty programming of, oh, I can't have that. It's like, oh, obstacle on my way. Well, that's it. Can't do it now. And on Tuesday, you're going to be presented a little bit with that. In fact, you're going to be presented with that for this whole month. Is you're going to want something, you're going to go for it, and you're going to get obstacle, obstacle, obstacle. And the question is, how bad do you want it? Mercury's on top of Algol and Taurus. There's going to be kind of a forcing something here. But I say this because it's one of those things of you need to be clear on what you're kind of doing. Like, are you playing to win, or are you playing for shits and gigs? And when you kind of readjust your thinking, if you're underneath the mindset of playing to win, then you're not necessarily worried about excuses. You're not really worried about challenges. You're focused on solutions. And I think that's really important with this Mercury square Saturn, because it's going to be so easy for you guys to find problem after problem, challenge, and say, oh, I got to give up here. You need to be solution oriented. You need to be solution minded. You need to say, again, what is really the goal out of all of this? And I say this because Mercury's going to enter shadow. It already squared Saturn, and it's going to sextile Jupiter. There is a growth opportunity here. Mercury sextiling Jupiter is like getting the combination right, getting everything together where it all makes sense. And it's, again, that I said this last week, it's all coming together. And as Mercury, again, sextiles Jupiter too, this is seeing the bigger picture. This is seeing the vision. And it's the vision materializing too. Like Mercury is about like our minds, and Jupiter is kind of like much more about like our faith. And when you have those two planets making a harmonious connection, like it's one of those things where, when I was young and I heard people talking about like religious or spiritual experiences, I never understood it until I had my experience, right? Until I put the two and two together. And that's what Mercury sextiling Jupiter is like: rational thinking and ideas meshed along with vision and belief and faith. And Mercury sextiling Jupiter is kind of like getting those two, those things together to create a perfect recipe. And I think as Mercury enters shadow and sextiles Jupiter, it already got past the square, but this is, again, we're going to be coming back all over. We're going to be coming back over this stuff here over in this next month. But also during this time, as Mercury enters shadow and communications are going to happen, or conversations are going to happen, ideas are going to be put in place, and you're going to be like pushing forward with a vision. But at the same time on Tuesday, the moon is going to be conjoining Venus and then conjoin Neptune and Jupiter. If there was a day, I'm going to allow you you're allowed to do whatever you fucking want. But I would say it is okay to get lost in the sauce. It is okay to that's what's really hard about the Jupiter Neptune stuff, is navigating what is like, deception and what is like healthy romanticism, healthy envisioning stuff. And I mean, like Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, moon, fucking enjoy it for a second. Like really take a step. Like I tried to say this last summer, and you guys did not believe me until after this winter. But I said last summer, I was like, enjoy the summer. It's not going to be a fun winter. And a lot of people said I was right about that. I'll have you guys decide for yourself whether or not I was right. But this is one of those moments of like, really let this sink in. There's a lot of Pisces stuff. And I talk a lot about like Neptune, Venus, Neptune, Jupiter, Pisces, all four of those, or Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. Yeah, Pisces, that's four things. All, I think a key word that they would all share is nostalgia and memory and like good feelings, right? And I talk a lot about like, this law of attraction shit, this manifestation stuff. It's all about you have to feel it in your body, right? Like, you're not going to attract what you want if you can't bring that feeling to yourself naturally. Like, what does it feel like? Again, if you want, a successful business, what does it feel like to be in that mode, to live a lifestyle where, you have a successful business? If you want to be in a healthy relationship, what does that feel like for you? And this is one of those moments of like, this is a opportunity to tune into your feelings. And I think it's really easy to avoid those things, no matter what they are. Like, especially Pisces, it's all about escape and avoidance if you're not really like in fucking, your chakras are lined up type shit. This is just one of those moments where you're going to be really reflective on, I think it's going to be really emotionally sensitive, but it's a lot of good stuff, right? It's Venus. This is what, we're enjoying, and it's on top of Neptune. So it's all over the place, and Jupiter's there. So it's kind of larger than life, and the moon's there. So it's like, it's just one of those things of, Don't be afraid to feel it, but also don't be afraid to enjoy it. Don't be afraid to idealize it. Don't be afraid to like, even if it's just one of those things of like the movie might be fake, but enjoy the movie anyway. It's still a good fucking story. Stories don't have to be real for them to have an effect. Dreams don't have to be real in order for them to have an effect. It's all about your mind and like mind over matter, really. And this is stuff I'm working on too. So I'm like, I'm doing all this stuff too. But as the moon conjoins Venus, Neptune, Jupiter, I think you're just going to be a little bit all over the place. I think there's going to be this is what I will say is bad about it. I think if you're looking for like fucking clarity and like pinpoint precision, I don't think that's going to happen. But that's not the time for this. The time for this is, get the fucking details later. A lot of this is you just need to go. You just need to either go, do something. You need to do the Pisces thing where it's like fucking do the thing first, ask questions later. And this moon, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune is like, I hate to say this, because I don't want to say I hate to say this, but you just kind of have to like trust the magic of things. In the group chat, in the Telegram, we were talking a little bit about how magic works, and in the astrology community, there's a lot of focus on planetary magic, and I believe in magic. Like I used to do a lot of it, but there's a certain point in your magical thinking if you practice magic in your life, you get to a certain point where all magic is just taking an action and associating an outcome with that action, right? Or an intention with that, like putting an intention to an action and then expecting a certain outcome. And depending how connected your beliefs are to your actions will result in the outcome that you want. And there's sort of a certain moment where in your journey where you kind of don't really need to do the ritual stuff. Like something I've been really meditating on is like when you're kind of living in your purpose, whatever that means. And that could be from moment to moment. When you're in that moment of purpose and when you're in that flow state, you don't need to do the magic to create the magic, but you do need to kind of understand what is going to take you there. And I bring all this up to say, like, this is going to sound so, just follow the magic wherever that's at for you. Follow that very spirited feeling. Because I feel like that's really this is all Taurus and Pisces. Like, don't be afraid to lean into it. Don't be afraid to let it take you somewhere. I think a lot about how, like, safety is an illusion, and it really does take risks. And Jupiter's all about gambling. And, if you're going to gamble, life's all about taking risks, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And a lot of this looks like winning, in my opinion. If you're not afraid to gamble and you're not afraid to take a risk, and I feel like everyone's afraid to take a risk, and it's just the difference between people who are afraid and not afraid to take a risk are the people who will just not listen to their fears. I've taken plenty of risk, and I get scared all the time for all the risks I have to take, but that doesn't stop me from doing that. And so I just look at this as like, for the people that are really in resistance mode, stop. Like let that dissolve away. And I think for the people that are magically inclined and that are very like all over the place, use this to your advantage. I can keep talking about this all day long, but anyway, let's keep going. Let's keep moving forward. We get to Wednesday. Moon ingresses into Aries, and we have Venus conjoining Neptune. Really, there's the difference between like Venus coming up to Neptune with the moon and then Venus hitting Neptune and Venus and Jupiter. It's the difference is going to be very, very minor throughout the next couple of days. But the moon will conjoin Neptune and Jupiter. And as we get into Wednesday, in the middle of the day, moon's going to go into Aries. And this is going to be a weird moon in Aries transit, because this is why the moon is not going to make any aspects. It's going to conjoin Chiron on Thursday, but then it won't even sextile Saturn until Friday. And it'll square Pluto on Friday. So on Wednesday, the moon's going to go into Aries, and the moon, like emotions, right? It's in Aries, has to be confrontational, has to be charged up. But the moon's not going to be doing anything. So there's going to be this kind of restlessness on Wednesday of like wanting to do something, but also everything's in Pisces and Taurus. And it's going to be like, let's do nothing and melt in the couch instead. Like Taurus and Pisces, I think, are the most, I don't want to say not productive, because Taurus can be very productive. But when it's like combined with Pisces, it's, the stars aren't really saying like, it's really easy to lean into the couch, I think. And I think as the moon's in Aries, there's going to be this feeling of like wanting to pursue, wanting to like initiate and go, but the moon is still waning. The moon is now going into its dark phase before we get to this total solar eclipse. Or it's not a total solar eclipse. I take that back. And that's important. It's just a solar eclipse. But as the moon goes into Aries, there is this kind of focus on like, okay, well, what can I do? Where can I plug myself in? But the ruler of the moon is Mars in Pisces. And I think it's just good. I think you're really just going to be kind of scattered. Like if you're someone like me, and I don't like saying I have ADHD. I mean, like I'm clearly all fucking scatterbrained. I just don't like using labels as far as shit like that. But I will tell you, if you're someone like me and you got scatterbrain stuff, this is a great scatterbrain day. So don't be hard on yourself if you can't focus. But this moon in Aries, ruled by this Mars in Pisces, is going to be like, you know, well, it's one of those things of the moon in Aries needs to like take action and be charged up, but Mars in Pisces isn't going to like know exactly what to do. So I feel like there'll be this kind of feeling like wanting to take action, but not having either the energy or the time. I think another way this might look would be like if the moon's in Aries and Mars is in Pisces right before new moon. This is kind of like if you ever have like guests coming over and you like last minute clean everything up, and it's kind of like you're like, I got to do this and I got to do that, and nothing's in order or systematic. You kind of just are going crazy and random cleaning up everything. That's kind of like what Wednesday is. Moon will be in Aries, and it's really just going to be like, all right, this is how I feel. I think you might feel a little bit like emotionally aggressive, kind of confrontational. But I think the other thing, though, is, the other thing on Wednesday is Venus is conjoining Neptune. Let's talk about Venus. Value, love, romance, beauty, aesthetics, connection, indulgence. She's exalted, and she's on Neptune. Have a little fun, to be honest with you guys. Have a little fucking fun. If you're not having fun already, I think with Venus conjoining Neptune too, Neptune makes things so blurry. Neptune makes things so, I think of shallow depth of field. I think of, when you really like someone, they look better in your head than maybe like someone else who doesn't like them. They'll look like ugly. Like Venus conjoining Neptune is like your thoughts are more powerful, like mind over matter. But in this case, it's like Venus, Neptune. It's like, some people like horseradish. I don't. Some people like certain shit. And I'm bringing this all up because I think Venus conjoining Neptune is, no matter what it is that you're looking at, I think I don't want to say it's distorted, but something that is usually enjoyable might be even more enjoyable if you're not used to having it all the time. And I think Venus conjoining Neptune is really idealizing what you value, really romanticizing, again, being completely saturated in it. And that's not bad, right? Like, I think it's, I want to sit here, like, I will say, like, I'm definitely one of the people that will say, like, yes, Neptune also rules deception, and it's super, and like, don't lean into this stuff that much. But also, there's kind of a time and place for the healing to happen. And this is it. I think when it comes to Venus and it's like fun and it's conjoining Neptune, I think if you're like, again, if you're trying to control the situation, you're not going to have a fun time. The Pisces MO is let go of the control. Like you need to, like, you can't fix or change other people. You can only fix and change yourself, and only, you can't always control the outside circumstances. And so I think as Venus is in Pisces conjoining Neptune, allow that to dissolve and allow yourself to be where you're at and enjoy what is around you, and not just stress about what you don't know or if you're being deceived or what is true or not true. I think there is a little bit of like, hey, don't be afraid to kind of question things. But it's just one of those things of, if you're going to question stuff and things are bad, you're going to find out about it later. But it's not about that right now, right? Like, it's kind of like if you buy a brand new car, right? You're talking to someone who I can't enjoy things that I buy because I get too stressed out about like if I bought a brand new car, I wouldn't even like the idea that I have a new car. I'd get too stressed out about, like, fuck, now I got to make these payments. Insurance is going to go up. Now it's dropped in all this value. And I'm bad at that. But then I would have to force myself to take a moment of like, hey, this is a nice car. Appreciate what you have. And this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted to create. That's kind of what this is like, allow yourself to like enjoy what is in front of you, regardless of what that is, even though it's going to be easy to be in the Neptune cloud, like For example, wedding days. A lot of the girls, you guys are gonna like this, and a lot of you are gonna fucking put this in your wedding. So I used to be a wedding DJ, and I used to work for a really, really big company, and we did this thing called the Secret Last Dance. It's fucking awesome. I literally couldn't even watch couples do it because it would make me cry. But pretty much what happens on people's wedding days is women, when I say women, men don't give a fuck about the wedding day. They're gone. But women will spend their whole fucking lives planning for this shit. And they are so involved in this wedding that they don't even take one fucking second to enjoy their wedding day. And, because they have to worry about the food and the guests and who's sitting with who, and all of that shit, right? But in my company, we used to offer something called the Secret Last Dance, which what that would be was we would do the last dance, everyone would celebrate, and I would kick everyone out for the grand exit. And as I kicked everyone out, I'd kick out all the venue staff too. And I would let the couple have one last dance by themselves, playing whatever song they want to hear, and I would kick everyone out, and it was just by themselves. And oftentimes, that was like for people, like their one moment to enjoy their wedding day. Like the whole vision that they've created and all of this stuff. And like when you're in the middle of creating a vision, like you don't often get a time to just pause and like fucking soak it in. This is one of those moments of especially like think about a wedding, like it takes years to plan. And if you've never planned a wedding before, as someone who's worked in the industry, it is quite crazy what goes into it. But if you don't take a moment to just stop, like what is that? It's like how Ferris Bueller's Day Off opens up. Like if you don't take a moment to fucking stop and look around, like it's gone. And that's this Venus conjoining Neptune. Like really look around. What are you doing? What are you creating? Is this what you want to, and tattoo this shit in your brain, whatever the fuck it is, because you're gonna want to come back to it. You're gonna enjoy it, even though in this moment it's one of those things like women's wedding days. Like I've seen women literally not even have a good time until it was over, and then they look back and they're like the whole wedding day they were stressed, and then once it's done they're like, oh, that was so much fun. That's kind of like what's going on right now. So just be patient with yourself, and like even in this moment, if you're stressed and wanting things to be like in a certain way, just let go of that. So anyway, here we go. So Venus will conjoin Neptune, and then we get to Thursday, and the moon. Well, it's one of those. Let me go back to the moon being in Aries for a second with this wedding analogy. Brides do this all the time. Like they want to, like for example, when dinner starts, the ceremony's over, the first dance is over, and dinner is like the bride's first moment to realize that she has like nothing to actually do but just sit there, and they like. It's kind of a lot when you're in the middle of like eating. Like a lot of brides can't even like eat in that moment because they have too much shit going on. But the moon in Aries, Mars and Pisces Wednesday thing is like wanting to do stuff, but like being in a moment of not having anything to do. Kind of like, again, it's like your wedding day and it's like now time to eat. And it's that weird moment where you're like, I have nothing to do, but I've been in like supercharged like boss mode for like months now. So that's what it's going to kind of feel. Thursday, when we get to the moon conjoining Chiron. I fucking love this Chiron and Aries shit. I think the moon conjoining Chiron. I've had Chiron go over like my Saturn. I've had Chiron do a lot of shit in my chart with it and being Aries. And like Chiron and Aries is there's a sensitivity to confrontation, decisive action, being blunt, being clear. But that moon and Aries conjoining Chiron, like for me, I'm a moon in Libra. And so I'm a fucking people pleaser. I'm a fucking doormat. And Chiron and Aries for me has been so much of like, you know what? It might be hard to say it, but it has to be done. And for me, I mean, Chiron went over my Saturn, so it turned into like a lot of self-respect stuff. But this moon on top of Chiron is very like, hey, like taking charge and taking action feels good. Like fighting feels good. Defending feels good. Moon conjoining Chiron and Aries, like it. Well, for example, I'm a moon in Libra. I want to have peace. It's like I'm emotionally connected to peace on a shitty way. I fucking hate being a moon in Libra sometimes. But the moon conjoining Chiron and Aries is like, sometimes you have to lean the other way. Sometimes you have to be decisive. Sometimes it's not about playing in the middle. Sometimes it's about like, you know what? This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm feeling. And this is the moon waning, getting up towards this towards this solar eclipse, right? Eclipses are huge changes. And this moon conjoining Chiron is kind of like, taking assertive action that you know is going to get you to where you want to be. And that's all that's happening on Thursdays. Moon conjoining Chiron and Aries. So I really want you to think about what actions are you taking? Where are you asserting yourself? And where is that? And this isn't necessarily like if it was a full moon conjoining Chiron, it's like all of this is building up to you confronting this and asserting yourself versus there is like a small little tiny self-assertion you have to do before a really big change happens. And it's oftentimes, we can really avoid some of the greatest opportunities in our life because we're so sensitive about something so fucking small and insignificant. And then you realize when you have a certain dream or a vision that you want to get to, that certain thing that you've been wanting to avoid is unavoidable. And it's a smaller piece to a bigger puzzle. And I feel like the moon conjoining Chiron and Aries is there's something that you're going to confront on Thursday that you weren't necessarily planning on confronting, but it is on the path to get to where you want to go. And you're going to confront it. It's going to feel good. And you're going to feel weird about it too. Because the moon's not going to do anything after it conjoins Chiron. And like the moon has a lot of time in Aries not doing things. And I don't think the moon in Aries likes that. But anyway, so Thursday, you're just going to have to, it's one of those things of, I remember being in school and it wasn't until like I kind of like I would let people bully me because I was a bitch. And it just and then it wasn't until like I was like, you know what? Like, what the fuck is up? That shit stopped. It wasn't until like I confronted, I was like, you know what? I don't like, what the fuck is the deal? What's up? Then that shit stopped. So don't avoid it. Friday, we get to the moon. The moon is going to be sextiling Saturn and squaring Pluto as it goes to the end degrees of Aries. Mercury will ingress into Gemini, and the moon will go into Taurus as we get ready for this eclipse. We go into Friday. The moon, again, is going to sextile Saturn. So this is very constructive, but I think as the moon squaring Pluto, it's bringing in tension with like power struggles. But I think as the moon's in Aries sextiling Saturn, this is kind of like, well, moon in Aries squaring Pluto in Capricorn is very like, Pluto is about power, right? And I mean, it's also in a Saturn ruled sign, so like powers, authorities, and stuff like that. And the moon in Aries is kind of like, well, for example, it's illegal to text and drive, but every single one of you texts and drives, or at least looks at your phone and drives. Moon in Aries is like, I'm not going to listen to that. Like, well, it's kind of like one of those things of, well, this is me being a Saturn in Aries on the South Node. Certain rules are meant to be broken. Certain rules are not meant to be followed because, it's really clear in society nowadays. I don't really believe in rules that aren't like based in reality. And I feel like this moon in Aries sextiling Saturn, squaring Pluto is kind of like not breaking or bending the rules, but overcoming like the power dynamic. Like, Pluto is like fear and Pluto is power. And it is amazing what fear look around. What has fear done to this fucking world in the past 2 years? People have completely eliminated half of like their fucking whole lifestyle out of fear. It's a very much more power. Like people are, in this world, we talk about like, oh, there's like a drug problem, but there's also like a fear problem because I've seen more people do stupid shit and change their whole lives based out of fear and be clear-minded. I don't know. It's just crazy. But anyway, I think this moon in Aries sextiling Saturn, squaring Pluto is going to be kind of like, okay, putting the pieces together. It's a little bit more constructive, but I think as it's squaring Pluto, it's just kind of like confronting power and confronting fear and having to do things that, you're not normally used to, but it's sextiling Saturn Aquarius. So there's kind of like there's an opportunity to do it at this moment. But Mercury enters Gemini on Friday. And I'm excited on paper. I'm excited for Mercury and Gemini. Again, Mercury is about communication, speech, ideas. We all know this. It's in its home sign of Gemini. It's going to be very, very clear. There's going to be a message communicated to us on Friday, Saturday. Again, I think, and I said this in my year ahead horoscope, if there is a day that the government's going to say that there's aliens or life on another planet, it's going to be Saturday if it happens. Friday or Saturday. I would say Saturday. Could easily be the end of the war too. S.J. Anderson was talking about this, about how the last Venus-Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces in the 1800s was like the end of the Crimean War with like France and Russia and stuff like that back in the 1800s. So it could be the end of the war on Friday and Saturday, but I'm a little looking at the rest of the year. I don't know how much the war energy is not stopping anytime soon. It's only going to get more and more worse as far as the world stage goes, but we'll talk about that as the year goes on. Anyway, Mercury's going to enter Gemini. We're like, Mercury and Taurus squaring Saturn on the North Node is like fixated on something and immovable versus like, gosh, like, well, it's one of those things of sometimes you just gotta fucking hold your line, even if it's a bluff. Like if you ever played poker, sometimes you ain't got a hand, but it ain't about, oh, is my hand working or not? You just kind of have to play your hold the line. And I feel like Mercury going into Gemini is like, like it pays off. Mercury in Gemini is the solution's clear, the answers are clear, the mind is clear, everything's running. Mercury is in shadow, and Mercury's about to go backwards. And in fact, the Mercury Cazimi is at 0 degrees Gemini, so pay attention to what happens on Friday. But I feel like as Mercury goes into Gemini, it's like understanding, clarity. I mean, everything starts to move much faster. And I feel like the snowball really starts to build up momentum here. Mercury enters Gemini, and then the moon is going to ingress into Taurus. And I mean, like, guys, it is solar eclipse time. It's not a total solar eclipse. But here's the thing. We haven't even had an eclipse in Taurus and Scorpio yet. The first eclipse, let's go back. Let's do a little reminder of what we just went through. This is going to be traumatizing for some of you, but let's go back to November 12th of 2021. Do you remember November 12th? Do you remember the 5 of November? It's one of my favorite fucking memes of all time. Was it? No, it wasn't November. Was it November 12th? Okay, maybe it wasn't November 12th. It was November 17th. This was the first, my bad, November 18th. So this was the first eclipse that we had in Scorpio and Taurus, but the nodes were in Gemini and Sag, so it doesn't count. But I want you to look at this eclipse, this total lunar, this was a total lunar eclipse in Taurus, was ruled by Venus. And this is when Venus entered shadow before she even went retrograde. Think about what has changed since November, right? This is November 18th. What happened November 18th? I had a specific thing that happened to me on November 18th, so I remember exactly what happened. This total lunar eclipse that we're having is literally coming right back to that. This is the first, again, I keep saying total eclipse. It's a solar eclipse, damn it. But I mean, as the moon goes into, this is the first actual eclipse that we have in Taurus with the nodes in Taurus there too. That's a really big deal. Well, anyway, I guess that brings us to Saturday, solar eclipse in Taurus, Venus conjoining Jupiter at her exalted degree. Like, for one, I'll put it to you this way. This would be, this would be a great day. Well, I don't want to say great because it's on paper, eclipses are supposed to be bad on paper, but on paper, a lot of shit is different. This would, like, Venus conjoining Jupiter is like sperm meet egg. New moon is like planting stuff. So, like, I really mean what I say here when I say start something. Like I said before, we're going to be reaping, or what's the word? What's the phrase? You are going to be, whatever you plant now, you will be, harvesting. I can't think of the word, in 2025 and in 2026. This is such potent energy to plant stuff. Even farming, farm. I don't give a shit. But I think as Venus conjoins Jupiter, total, I keep saying total, solar eclipse in Taurus. I mean, go big or go home. Straight the fuck up. Work hard, play hard. Venus conjoining Jupiter is it's very nice energy, but it's also like not for pussies. Like, it's very like Venus conjoining Jupiter is like, if you're not here to have a fun time, get the fuck out of here. Like, I hate, like, if you're like, and I do this all the time because, like, I'll be in like places like where it's supposed to be fun, but I'm on the edge all the time, and I have to loosen up to be like, okay, Cameron, have some fun. This is like Venus conjoining Jupiter. Let's just say it's a new moon in Taurus. Let's just say it's a new moon and it's not an eclipse. This is like, okay, we're focusing on the Taurus stuff, right? Stability, fixation, security, and it's ruled by this Venus, Jupiter, and Pisces. It's kind of like there's a lot of growth here. There's a lot of opportunity. This is very fertile soil. This is such fertile soil. It might be barren. There may not be anything growing. We have a garden right here, so I'm like looking at this garden. There might not be anything growing at this moment, but it's rich in nutrients. It's fertile. It's ready to be fucking planted. Plant the seeds. And I think with Venus conjoining Jupiter, there's this, again, like Venus conjoining Jupiter is like, this is what I want, and I'm going to do it big because this is what I believe in too. And this is Venus's exalted degree. This is, I said this analogy in the year ahead horoscope. It's like the Great Gatsby. He throws this big party, and what's her face, Daisy, or I can't remember her name, and everyone gets mad at me for not remembering her name. It's like he throws a big party, and like the chick shows up, and of course, like it's going to be a huge fucking party now because the thing that he wanted to happen happened. And so, go big or go home. Venus conjoining Jupiter. Have fun with it. Total solar eclipse ruled by this Venus and Jupiter. This is one of those things where the compound effect. You are going to do something now that is going to create a lot of momentum in your life. And you're not going to see that momentum for a while. It's kind of like planting, again, when you plant a seed, you're kind of just throwing a seed in the dirt, hoping for the best. I really look at this as this is really good. I mean, how often do you see an eclipse that's good? You really don't. And the rest of the year and the eclipses, by the way, the rest of this eclipse season, like the next eclipse in Scorpio is not good. And then next eclipse season in November is not good. So this is like the only good eclipse that we have. So really use it to your advantage. But I when we just talk about it, it just seems like on at the end of the day, it just seems like we're in new territory. We're starting something new, and it's beginning now. And in this next month, I cannot stress this enough, that this next month, everything changes. There's so much action going on in the next month. And it starts with this. So that's Saturday. Total solar eclipse, Venus conjoining Jupiter. I mean, I think I've talked about this ad nauseum for like almost like since like summer of last year. So I think you guys got the picture. Then we get to Sunday, and really the only thing on Sunday is the moon's going to be conjoining the North Node and squaring Saturn. I heard an astrologer comment on the Mercury North Node squaring Saturn is like a locked jaw, and it's funny because I got locked jaw. What's it called? Like a tension headache, where it's like, anyway, I had that like for this past week with Mercury on Algol on the North Node. But I look at this moon conjoining the North Node squaring Saturn, freshly off this eclipse, is the same thing. You are going to be given challenges. Right off of an eclipse, that moon is gaining in light. It's going to hit the North Node and square Saturn. I mean, like, you know where you're going. You know what has to be done. And you are going to have to confront authorities and walls and barriers that are going to want to stop you. You have to prove, like, if you can't just say, I want something. The universe is going to go, okay, you really want it? Step into that here. Meaning the universe will present to you challenges. The universe will present to you opportunities disguised as challenges, disguised as setbacks to stop you. And you have to ask yourself, is that enough to stop you? Is that enough to get you away from where you want to go? Or how bad do you want it? And this moon conjoining North Node in Taurus is like, you want it pretty fucking bad. So it's going to square Saturn, and it's going to be, no one's Taurus and Aquarius is very like going nowhere fast. No one's changing their minds on anything. So it's just one of those things of, you got to go where you got to go, regardless of who's going to stop you to get there. And I mean, really, that's it. Sunday, the moon will just kind of glide through Taurus, and it's not going to be till early Monday morning when the moon will go into Gemini. So then we talk about next week, Venus goes into Aries. Yeah, that's going to be bad, but she's kind of just prepping the Aries house before Jupiter and Mars is what I would say. Then we're going to have Sun conjoin Uranus. Sounds pretty radical. Sounds pretty liberating in a lot of ways for people. And then we're going to have Mercury sextile Venus, as Venus is in Aries and Mercury's in Gemini. Not a big week next week. Just seems like a lot of like opening up. But I guess that brings me to my final thoughts of this week. Like, again, this isn't a big lunar transit week. It's a big transit week. And again, it's going to take a while for the moon stuff to bring it all down to earth. But, there's really not a lot of final thoughts for this week, guys. I mean, you guys know what my thoughts are with this. I think as we're into that North Node's in Taurus, like, what the fuck do you want? What is security? What does value mean for you? And the South Node's in Scorpio. What do you got to get rid of? And this is now the total. Now when we get to the total lunar eclipse in Scorpio, that's going to be about like getting rid of stuff. But this is the North Node in Taurus. This is Venus and Jupiter. What do you want? What are you starting? What are you growing? What's going to give you security? What is that fucking vision that you have? And how are you well, again, you've got to, this is what I love about Venus. Like Venus in Aries is in detriment because, well, think of, this might be, it's controversial to say fucking anything nowadays. You're supposed to like woo women. Like women should just have things come to them. It's like very like, you want to have things, what's the word I'm looking for? Reception. You want to have things brought, and like with Venus and Jupiter, it's like, man, if you really want it, let it come to you. Don't just force yourself to grab it. And this Venus Jupiter stuff is like, if it's meant to be like, it's like, what's that stupid saying? It's like, if you love something, let it go. And if it, it's real, it'll come back to you. Kind of like that, but much more of like, be open to receiving and be in reception mode. This isn't about like, maybe because I'm a guy, I just think of like getting everything, but this is like manifesting stuff in the sense of like, for example, if you want good things to come with you or good things to be attracted to you, you have to be on that high vibration of receiving that. And I think as Venus is conjoining Jupiter, it's kind of like, it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like performance. It's easy to like, if, for example, if you're an athlete, let's say if you're a professional athlete, if your mind is not in, like if you even have any little bit of self-doubt while you're in the middle of, let's say you're a gymnast, like what's that one girl that like fucking destroyed the competition and then like quit? Simone Biles, I think that was her name. Anyway, she cracks me up because she just like slaughters everybody and then it's just like, oh, don't want to do it anymore. Well, there's a much more to that. That's a much more complicated story. Anyway, in those moments, it's one of those things. She didn't want to perform because of the anxiety, because she knew in that moment she could fucking injure herself. And it's one of those things where Venus conjoining Jupiter is like, in the moment of all this, you have to like believe. If you don't believe it, it's not going to happen. You got to really believe it. And sometimes when you look at this shit, when you look at all this Venus, Jupiter, Neptune stuff, is like, sometimes, it is easy to deny yourself what you want because you've never had it before. For me personally, this is me truly opening up to you guys right now. Losing weight, getting on this health diet, this health stuff I've been getting on has been so hard because I've realized how much I never believed I could be healthy or that I could have these things. And right now, what I'm going through is I'm having to force myself into believing something that my programming, my subconscious tells me is not real. So what I'm doing is going against everything of 25 years of shitty programming that I told myself what is real and what's not real. And I have to completely rewrite that. And in order to rewrite that, I have to go against everything that I know is real. And I have to believe in something I've never done before. And so this Venus, Jupiter, Neptune stuff is like, whatever you want in life is completely possible. But the challenge is that you believe it's not. And that Venus, Jupiter, Neptune is like, everything in your circumstance in your world might say, no, you're not allowed to have that. No, you can't do that. But the Venus, Jupiter, Neptune stuff is you just have to say, I don't care, and I'm going to believe in it anyway. You have to believe in it in order for it to be like, that's the whole thing with magic. Like if you are going to do a magical ritual and you're going to read all of these goddamn fucking astrology books and do all this magic, and if you don't believe in it, ain't shit going to happen. But you got to allow yourself to get out of your mind, to get out of your own way, and to just open up to source, open up to the fucking universe, and let those things happen. So those are kind of my final thoughts with this. This is the week to like not let reality get in your way. This is the week to gaslight yourself into believing whatever the fuck you want to believe that's going to make your life better, or that's going to cause growth, that's going to get you to where you want to be. This is not the week to let your shitty subconscious tell you otherwise. This is not the week to listen to naysayers. This is not the week to doubt yourself. This is not the week to listen to your fucking shitty voice in your head that tells you no. This is the week to get rid of all of those things and just do it anyway. No fear, KNOW, no fear, and do it anyway. And this isn't even about fear. This is about ascending from fear, completely dissolving of fear. It's like Well, it's one of those moments of I always think about they talk about this in a couple of movies, but like I think this is like the Egyptian mythology of like when you die, you have a conversation with God, and God asks, were you good enough to be there? And there's kind of like this level of real fucking honesty you have to have. And I think this week is like you have to have some real fucking honesty with what you want, with where you want to go, and are you getting out of your own way for that? So now I'm just kind of ranting, and I can literally talk about this all day long. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Thank you so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. Let me know what you guys are like. I really want to know what's going on with this Venus, Jupiter, Neptune stuff in your life. What house is it in your chart, and where is that showing up in your life? Let me know in the comments below. With that being said, I'll be seeing you guys next week.